Hello my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance, where people get exactly what they ask for, not what they want. And in today's episode, guys, smug, entitled idiots are getting destroyed. Your favorite. I hope you enjoyed today's super satisfying stories. Hit subscribe if you haven't. And as always, you can send or link your crazy stories to this email right here. We're diving in. So I used to work at a regional airline. The jet we used for our flight to the big city had 6 business class seats. The business class service was really good for a 2-hour flight. It included a full bar service, a hot meal, warmed bread basket, followed by a trolley with dessert and signature coffee. Oh, the good old days. One of our regular travelers was a local business owner who was just a slimy businessman. The guy had a reputation for making a lot of money from some pretty shady deals over the years. We would roll our eyes when we saw him coming to the check-in counter because the guy would always name drop and ask for special treatment. He always used the business class check-in, even though he was usually in economy. He also didn't have a frequent flyer status, but he was buddies with one of the airline executives and always let us know this fact when he checked in by making sure to tell us that he was good friends with Vice President Karen. He would always ask for free upgrades, extra baggage, last-minute discounts, etc. And if he didn't get what he wanted, he would immediately call Vice President Karen, who would usually then call us and approve whatever he wanted. So one day, the guy checks in for his flight to the big city. And of course, he name drops and asks for a free upgrade to business class because I'm friends with Vice President Karen, and she said it would be okay. The guy was traveling on a discounted ticket that was not eligible for upgrade, even if he did have an upgrade coupon, which he didn't. At that, I informed him that he was not eligible for any upgrade on this ticket and gave him his boarding pass and sent him on his way. Of course, he flips open his cell phone and the guy immediately calls Vice President Karen. Within 2 minutes, the phone at the check-in desk rings and it's VP Karen, authorizing me to override the policy to upgrade this guy to business class with no upgrade coupon required, if there's room. Now, the flight that day wasn't that busy, and only one person booked business class, leaving 5 open seats. I was really irritated, but I begrudgingly put the guy on the upgrade list anyways. He returns to the check-in counter and picked up his standby boarding card, and he gives me a smug, "told you so" look. But then, what VP Karen said clicked with me. She said, "if there's room." The next passenger I checked in was a super nice lady. Big smile, friendly, please and thank yous all around. I was taking my time, and we were chatting a bit since it wasn't busy. She was a teacher going on a trip to see her family, and it was her first visit with them in over a year, and she was gonna meet her little nephew for the first time. She was overjoyed just to have time off to travel. So with that, I typed in a few things into the computer to make it look like I was checking something about her connecting flights. And then I said, "Oh, it's your lucky day. You've been selected today to receive a free upgrade to business class." And she was shocked. She said, "I've never flown business class in my life. This is so amazing." At the time, we were rarely questioned if we upgraded someone without a certificate. So over the next 20 minutes, I found excuses to upgrade 4 other passengers. And by the time I went to board the flight, I had to tell the guy that I was sorry, but business class was full, and I can't offer him an upgrade today. The teacher I upgraded profusely thanked me again when she boarded with the rest of the business class passengers. Little did she know, it really made my day also. Guys, that teacher sounds amazing and she definitely deserved the upgrade, not some entitled idiot who calls VP Karen every single time he doesn't get his way. And I just want to say that I think some people do underestimate the power of being nice and kind to others. Like, there's a better chance that you'll get what you want by being polite, rather than yell in someone's face and go, "Oh, do you know who I am? Don't make me call my friend Karen," and acting all smug. So I was a sarcastic and easily annoyed guy in my 20s, and this often didn't help me get along with older or corporate types. I was working at a certain pumpkin-colored big box home improvement store one spring in the flooring department. It was just starting to get warm out, and the store didn't have much AC, so I was looking forward to a magical date where certain employees were allowed to switch their pants for shorts. Now the problem is, we had a new department manager who I'll call Dick, who was aggressively chasing a promotion to assistant manager, then store manager. The guy thought he could accomplish that by being a super by-the-book hard ass and being relentlessly metrics focused. This translated into a manager who was a know-it-all and a micromanaging dick. Anyway, I'm scheduled to open at 5 a.m. one day on the fabled day of cooler bottom wear, and I walk in all light and airy and bare-legged. Dick, who was the overnight manager the previous night, saw me, and the guy throws a fit. He asked me, "Hey, why are you out of uniform?" I tell him I'm not, I can wear shorts starting today. He then says to me, "Not in your position, in your department. Who told you that you could?" At that, I tell him, the employee handbook and the standard operating procedure. "I can show you if you don't believe me," I offered. He then says, "I know the standard operating procedure, and your department doesn't get to wear shorts. That's only garden. Go home and change right now or you'll get written up." The guy demanded, face getting redder from my defiance. I then say to him, "Okay, Dick, if that's how you want to play it, I'll be back in 1 hour, I sighed. He then says to me, "Maybe the loss of an hour pay will teach you something." Now, the thing is, I know better. And the reason I know better is because I'm one of those weirdos who actually reads the entire standard operating procedure document, the employee handbook, and I really hate being wrong. So I check the document before doing anything different day to day. In my store, the standard operational procedure was like invoking God. If it said so, that won every single argument. So I go home, change into my pants, but bring my shorts back to work with me. By now, Dick's shift is over and I ask the new morning manager on duty, Darren, to meet with me. Darren says, "Why? What's up?" I say to him, "Oh, just an SOP issue." At that he says, "Okay, give me like 10 minutes. So I swing by my desk and I printed out several things. Number 1, I printed my latest pay stub that included my official job title and department number. Number 2, the company directory that listed the department names and their associated numbers. Number 3, the SOP that dealt with when and which department and employees can wear shorts. Number 4, the annual email from the regional VP confirming which departments could wear shorts starting when, which also included the line, "And this letter is to be posted at the time clock, between the dates of so-and-so." Number 5, the SOP detailing the company transportation and mileage reimbursement policy. And number 6, a Google Maps route that mirrored the route I take to and from work, with a total mileage highlighted. So I meet with Darren and explained what happened, and handed him each page in turn as they become relevant. At the end, we agreed that I was right on every single account, and he asked me what I wanted. I told him, 1, I want the time. I was turned away before I could clock in, so I want to be paid starting at 5 a.m. Feel free to check the CCTV if you want to confirm when I arrive. Number 2, I want the gas mileage because Dick sent me on essentially a company errand with my own vehicle, through no fault of my own. Number 3, I want this letter posted at the clock, like it says it's supposed to be. Number 4, I want you to talk to Dick about this because I told him that this was the standard operating procedure before he sent me home. And lastly, number 5, I'm changing back into my shorts. At that, Darren says to me, "All of that sounds more than fair. Get the paperwork for the clock adjustment and the mileage to me today and I'll sign it." The letter mysteriously went missing from the time clock the next day, but I replaced it every day until I happened to see Dick snatch it off the board and throw it away. I reported that as well, and the letter stopped going missing. He didn't talk to me much, and he was transferred to another department a month later, so all in all, it's a win-win, I think. Yeah, that's definitely a win for OP because we all know for sure that Dick was fuming at the sight of OP in shorts every day, right? And here's a little tip for Dick, like if you want to become the manager, I think it's wise to familiarize yourself with the standard operating procedures before you embarrass yourself, sir. And since we're on the topic of bosses getting angry at employees, my goodness, listen to this next one, guys, where a power-tripping boss regrets his decision big time. So it's been maybe 5 to 7 years since this happened. Where I used to work, there's a semi-strict dress code that needs to be adhered to, so we look presentable when going to customers' houses. The minor details are more or less negotiable depending on who's our manager that day. We have a normal manager that we see almost daily, but if he's off or it's the weekend, someone else subs in. The day this happened was a Saturday, and our regular manager was off, so the replacement manager was in for the day. The guy happened to be a hard ass whom no one liked, and he made it his life goal to make all the techs miserable. So we walked through the door, and we had to pass through the manager's office to get to our meeting area. My coworker Tim walked in the door with everything looking right on his uniform, but his shirt was untucked. The following conversation then takes place. So Mr. Hardass says, "Hey, "Hey, your shirt should be tucked in." Tim says, "Absolutely, I will do that when I set my gear down and go to the bathroom." Mr. Hardass says, "No, you need to show up ready for work, not show up and get ready on my time." Tim responds, "Okay, let me set my stuff down and I'll go right to the bathroom and I'll tuck it in." At that, Mr. Hardass says, "No, you are going to tuck it in right now before you walk another step into my building." Tim asked him, right now, are you sure?" And Mr. Hardass replies, "Right now." So at that moment, I watched as my coworker did as instructed. Tim unbuttons his pants and he pulls them all the way down to his ankles, and then he proceeded to smooth out his shirt, and then reached all the way down to pull his pants all the way back up and rebutton them. From there, he immediately walks outside and calls the HR hotline and told them that his manager on duty just forced him to undo his pants, semi-strip in front of him in his personal office, and wouldn't allow him to go to the bathroom to tuck his shirt in. That he felt really uncomfortable to be around Mr. Hardass and didn't know if he had any ulterior motives. Now, none of us knew exactly what happened from that phone call on, but we do know that the manager on duty got moved to the safety team, where he was no longer in charge of any subordinates. Guys, this has got to be one of my favorite malicious compliances ever, and what satisfaction. Like, the guy was basically demoted from a management position to being in charge of nobody. And all I can say is good riddance. Like, bosses who feel like they have to mark their territory and make life harder for subordinates for no reason should not be in that position. And guys, it would have been way funnier if Tim was going commando. Could you imagine that? So back in my college days in the late 90s, I worked in my college's alumni communication center. In reality, it's a call center where college students work to ask the low-giving alumni for money. The college had professional folks to handle the big mega donors. I luckily wasn't a student caller, which seemed awful. I, a sophomore, was, and this was the official job title, data entry. A quick sidebar, we also had a couple of call coaches who were seniors, who would monitor the callers and give them feedback on how to do a better job at asking alumni for money. Typically, the donations were in the $100 to $250 range. When callers made a call, they recorded the outcome of the call on a sheet of paper. I would then collect the sheets and then go to the sole computer in the call center and record the data. Most of the results I entered would be a no answer or left a message on a voice machine, and sometimes we got a donation. So I would enter the caller outcome into the computer and somewhere else, and the alumni department would generate a donation envelope that was mailed to the alumnus, so the alumnus can then mail a check back to us. Now, about 10% of the donations would be by credit card. At the end of the night, after the callers left, I would spend about 30 minutes processing credit cards through this dial-up credit card machine. I did this without issue for 2 months, September and October. And now enters Karen, the new boss lady on the call center. She finally notices the extra 30 minutes on my timesheet each day, and she asks me about it sometime in late October. I tell her that I process the credit cards after everyone leaves for the night. That's how I was trained by the previous data entry person. Now, hearing that, it upset Karen, who says that I'm far too young to be handling credit card information. She makes it clear that I'm to stick to my job of only entering the caller's data. Period. End of story. Data entry only. No handling the money because money's made to be handled by grown-ups. To be perfectly clear, these were credit card numbers handwritten on a sheet of paper. Absolutely no cash money involved on my end. So you got it, condescending Karen. I stopped processing the credit card donations. I just set them in a pile at the end of the night by the credit card machine. And with each passing night, the pile grows and grows and grows. November ends, and the pile is now 250 pages or so thick. It also wasn't my job to ask questions like, who's processing these sheets? So I left it alone. Since the month ended and no credit cards were processed, Karen absolutely failed to hit her fundraising goals. She then starts to berate the call coaches and the callers for not doing a good enough job. She then starts spending more time in the call center, watching everything and everyone like a hawk. Meanwhile, I continue to do exactly what I was told to do. Karen at this point got desperate. One day, she would offer a prize like a college hat. And then the next, she would give us a long lecture about how everybody shouldn't be lazy and how they should do their work. Over the course of December, I kept adding to the pile of unprocessed cards. It's a good 500 pages thick by now. Compared to the massive pile of sheets of no answers and left a message, it's not very noticeable. Naturally, someone in the alumni departments noticed that the donations coming in are down 25% over November and December. This results in me coming back from Christmas break, and I get to meet Cool Chad, the new boss dude over the call center. Karen's no longer there. He asked me if my job includes processing credit cards. I told him that Karen told me not to, but I was trained to process them. In fact, I'm the only one who's been trained on how to process them. He then says, "Cool, please process the credit cards." Cool Chad then asked if there's any unprocessed credit card sheets, and I tell him, "Oh, yeah, there are." Cool Chad then asked me if I could get this done over the next couple of weeks, to which I say, "Oh, sure, no problem." So I spent several hours over a couple of Saturdays processing the credit cards. And Cool Chad has the absolute best January ever in the history of the call center. But why is Cool Chad Cool Chad? Well, in February, Cool Chad gave me a raise from $8 an hour to $10 an hour. Thanks, Cool Chad. Silly, condescending Karen, right? Tells OP that only grown-ups should handle money, but she fails to find a grown-up to replace OP to handle the money. And then she wonders why donations are down, like maybe she shouldn't have been the boss at all because she's not too bright by the sounds of it. So back in the early 2000s, I was a management trainee for a manufacturing company in the UK. I was responsible for quality control and production management. I was 22 years old, keen as a punch, and I was ready to change the world. About 11 months into the role, I got a new boss. Let's call him Fred. Fred was the company owner's son, and he was basically a 45-year-old F-up who had only ever been a drug dealer and a DJ, and now he stood to inherit the entire company. His management style was, let's say, interesting. The guy would deviate from screaming at you for the most benign thing ever to screaming, "I can't deal with the pressure, so I'm going home for the day," in a matter of hours. The guy also thought he was a manufacturing genius, but his ideas were crazy. But he would scream at anyone who questioned him. With that, there was a 52-year-old machine operative who we'll call Roy, who's worked on the same machine for over 30 years. Roy could tell when his machine was 2 weeks away from a breakdown just because it sounded different. He was truly at one with his machine. So Fred decided that we would modify Roy's machine so we could extend the range of products we could manufacture. In order to do this, he decided that we would add an extra spindle to the machine. Now, the problem was that each product would finish at a different time, and you would need to remove a product from the machine while the other one was still spinning. Roy protested and said that he would never use it, but Fred went ahead and he modified it over the weekend with a subcontractor. On Monday, Roy said, "You must be joking, I'm not using that." To which Fred says, "You will use it or you'll be looking for a new job tomorrow." At that, Roy says, "It's not safe, I won't use it, and if you try to make me, I will report you." And that's when Fred said, "If you report me, I'll make sure you don't ever find work again." So with that, Roy smiled and said, "Okay, fine, I will load the next job, but you can run it first." And Roy loads his next job, and he takes 2 steps back, and he also looked at me and said, "Stand back." So Fred starts the machine, and it all went well for about 30 seconds. The first job had finished, and Fred pressed stop. However, he now had to lean over the other job that was still spinning at 2,000 rotations per minute. Now, I didn't see it happen, but I heard an awful scream and then I saw blood everywhere. Fred fainted onto the machine, narrowly missing the spindle with his face and his greasy long black hair. We then pressed the emergency stop and we picked him up, and that's when I spotted his fingers in the machine. I then picked up his 2 middle fingers and gave them to a colleague to put into a freezer bag, which was a waste of time because they couldn't reattach them as they were too mangled. Fred never came back to work. Apparently, he told his father that he wasn't cut out for running the company, and I also left 6 months later. I saw recently that it was bought out in a management buyout, and good old Roy was the operations director. Good for him. Guys, this is exactly what happens when you think you know everything, and everybody should listen to you because you happen to be the owner's son. And honestly, Fred is lucky that he only lost his fingers and not his life that day. And I'm also willing to bet that the guy that modified the machine probably told him multiple times that it was unsafe. With that said, I just want to say that, guys, you have the right to refuse unsafe work. And if you're fired over it like Fred threatened to do with Roy, well, that's just going to be some extra money in your pocket. So I was at the doctor's office today, and I had to bring my 15-month-old twins with me. These kiddos do not enjoy being cooped up in a stroller, but letting them wander around isn't an option since they'll both immediately bolt in opposite directions. They have clean diapers, they've been fed, they've been hydrated, so at this point any fussing is just stroller-related crankiness. In preparation for having to wait a while and wanting to be considerate of others who were in the waiting room, I packed a diaper bag full of endless snacks and sippy cups. Sure enough, 5 minutes in, they lose their mind. So I instantly start giving them snacks, and I'm also walking back and forth in the very, very large waiting room. Now, I'm at the back area, and I'm not even close to being in anyone's way. And as long as I'm pacing, the beasties will quietly munch away on their Cheerios. At one point, I stop pacing to hear the doctor mumble the next patient's name in a barely audible whisper. And this is where a cranky old lady decides to weigh in on my parenting. I hear a huffing noise, so I look over to her, and the second we make eye contact, she says, "Oh my god, you've got to stop walking up and down in that back area. You are making me dizzy. Sit down. Also, you shouldn't be feeding them that much. Just sit down and they'll relax too. Watching toddlers really shouldn't be that hard, hun." And I'm thinking, thanks. Firstly, my girls are very healthy, but they were preemies born at 3 pounds. And they're still very tiny, so I'll feed them all the damn Cheerios I want. Second, I'm doing this not for myself or the twins, but for the benefits of those around us. Finally, I was waiting to find out if my scan showed cancer or not, so I was all out of F's given at that moment. Now time for malicious compliance. I take her advice and I sit down right next to her. There's tons of empty seats everywhere, by the way. Instantly, they start screaming their heads off, and what do? I pull out my book and start reading. Now, anyone who's ever been seated next to a stranger's baby having a meltdown, close your eyes and imagine that moment. Now double it to account for twins. Within 5 minutes, Karen's looking like she's about to snap and suggests that they might want a snack. To which I calmly respond, nah, I shouldn't be feeding them that much. And I calmly turn the page of my book. 10 minutes later, my name's finally called, and the lady looks like she's about to give up on life. I, however, have read my first chapter in ages. I guess watching toddlers really isn't that hard after all. Now that was brilliantly executed, guys. And if I was there, I'd be laughing so hard at Karen getting what she deserved. Some people should really keep their parenting advice to themselves, guys. And for all who are wondering, OP did comment saying that the scans came back showing no signs of cancer, so that's great. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /malicious compliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the stories today. If you did, hit that thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy, crazy stories. And if you missed yesterday's episode on the channel, it's in our entitled People episode, where Karen's son robs a store and she goes ballistic when they get caught. Guys, it's such a funny story, so go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.